Okay, I hope everybody has joined in, and could you please confirm in the chat box that you're able to listen to my voice and I'm audible to you? Yes, am I audible to you? Could you please confirm?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible, ma'am.
All right. So I've waited for your classmates to join in almost 10 minutes, and that's all I can wait from now on. Whenever we have online classes, I expect you to come online within the time, of course. Anyway, the other day when we concluded our class, I believe we were talking about the three unities of Aristotle, and we were trying to correlate it with the drama itself, Oedipus Rex. Is that correct? Yes or no? What were we talking about? Do you remember? So this is something that we were discussing the other day. I would like to give you a quick recap of it, that there are three unities which are given by Aristotle that you know already. Unity of time, place, and subject matter. And we are going to definitely talk about that how this time, action, and place is prevalent or connected to this Greek tragedy, which is Oedipus Rex. Before we move on, I would like to give you a quick, um, um, you know, um, let's watch a video together in which somebody is explaining that what are these three types of unities. Although we did talk about it the other day as well, but just to give you a recap, let's take a look at it once more. So first one is unity of time. Now, of course, Aristotle says that the action of the play should take place preferably in 24 hours. So time has to be in a certain, we can say, time frame should be there. Then unity of action. Now, this brings to the question that what constitutes action? Action is not in terms of characters fighting each other or going violent and being spectacular on the stage. However, action is something when the plot is progressing further and the interest of the audience is more developed. In Greek theaters, action was contained within the narratives in form of dialogues. So action could be of two types, which is embedded within the narratives, which are linear and non-linear. Unlike in the past, today non-linear storytelling is often desired. Non-linear से मुराद simply ये होगा that you can go into the future, you can go into the past, but you're not, stick or which means you can use the technique of flash forward and flashbacks. But in the Greek theater, it was not like that. You had to only follow the linear plot for the audiences to understand the entire story. So the linear narrative basically describes story, actions, or events in a sequential manner. So, whenever there is a discussion about unity of action, it's about the how the subject matter of the entire story is going in a sequential or chronological manner. ठीक है, chronological ये भी लिखा हुआ है और sequential ही इसका मतलब होता है. Then we have the third one, that is unity of place. Now, unity of action inherits or it inheres in the unity of place. It is embedded within the unity of place. A play's action takes place in a minimal number of location, which means it's not like that you are going to change one action or you're going to shoot one action in winter season and the next action is in summer and you're changing. Like in modern drama, you can change too many settings at once. Too many places could be included. However, in ancient Greek theater, one actor had to play multiple roles. Therefore, it was difficult to portray characters in different places. Therefore, they had some limitations regarding costumes as well. So these multiple roles were played by a single actor, and he had to perform in the single location only. It was not a possibility to change the location. So unity of place simply means that The place stays the same because of the limitations of the theater. This is what I wanted to, give you a recap about. Now let's listen to that video that I was referring to. Um, it is from the book called Aristotle's Poetics. Poetics एक book है जिसमें definitely he's talking about many things that is related to Greek drama, and three unities are one of those. So let's watch it together and then we come back and try to relate it with Oedipus Rex itself.
The three unities are commonly ascribed.
Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing with our series on Aristotle's Poetics. In this video we're going to be looking
Okay, I hope the video's voice is audible to you.
Yes, ma'am.
at unities.
Okay, the speaker of the video is a little fast, so I want you to listen for first few seconds. If you want, I can slow down the pace, but I think you should be able to follow it because it's not that difficult. In order to complete this discussion in 7 to 8 minutes, the speaker is quite, we can say fast. And with the same organization, you can find about reversals and recognition, hamartia and tragic figure. बहुत अच्छे से इस चैनल पे आपको ये एक्सप्लेन कर रहा है. Even if you don't understand in the class, right now if you're going through something, whatever it is, you can later on come on this website or this YouTube channel and listen to this once more for clarification. Now let's watch it together.
In drama. Now, the most important element of tragedy for Aristotle was the plot. With respect to plot, Aristotle is often said to speak of three unities: the unity of action, the unity of time, and the unity of place. However, these rules are not actually attributable to Aristotle, but rather to an inaccurate interpretation of his works by the French neoclassicists. While he does speak of the importance of the unity of action, he only briefly mentions the unity of time as more a description than a proscription, and is completely silent on the unity of place. So, however, before looking into the impacts of this misinterpretation, we must define what is exactly meant by each term. The quote-unquote minor unities are easy to define. The unity of time means that a play must take place over the course of 24 hours, though sometimes it's argued to be 12 hours due to the ambiguity of Aristotle's language of the single revolution of the sun. The unity of place means that the play must take place in a single location. Now, these ideas sound very cool and interesting in that all the action has to be done in 24 hours, it's in a single place. You might see why these are appealing ideas. However, these were not things that Aristotle really argued for in any big way. He did, however, argue for the unity of action. The principal unity that Aristotle actually discusses, and the only one that he takes as requisite for making a good tragedy, is the unity of action. By this he means that a play should focus on a single plot, a single reversal of fortune from good to bad or bad to good. Everything in the plot should be essential to it, i.e. removing anything would make it disjointed. For Aristotle, tragedy is an imitative art. The thing that it is imitating is a single complete action. This is one of the things that distinguishes tragedy from epic poems, which often have multiple big actions and take a long time and are very long. Tragedy is about zooming in, focusing down on one single action that represents kind of the turning point of the story. Some people have described Greek tragedy and Greek theater as described by Aristotle as taking our normal conception of a story and zooming down to kind of the moment just before the climax, and the moment just after, not taking into account kind of the whole process of what was happening before, a turning point, the building to that final action. It's just this very zooming down on that single action and why it matters. There are some elements of Aristotle's ideas which have carried on to modern thought regarding theater. The principle of Chekhov's gun, the idea that if a gun is present in the play, it has to go off at some point, can be seen as being based on this principle. Basically, if the gun could be removed without damaging the plot, it should be. So, if you have any elements to a plot that are not essential to it, why are you including them at all? However, other elements of Aristotle's unity of action have fallen by the wayside. Many stories today have multiple interweaving actions, which are quite complicated and may relate to each other but are importantly distinct. Much of Shakespeare's work does not conform to Aristotle's unity of action, having many different plot lines representing different actions that are going on. Aristotle briefly mentions the unity of time as a description of one of the distinctions between tragedy and epic poetry, not as necessarily a required element of a good tragedy. It's important to note that a lot of the things that Aristotle says can be interpreted as kind of ambivalent between this is what you should do and this is just what is done, but this leans more on the this is what is done side, whereas the unity of action leans more on the side of this is what you should do. He claims that tragedy attempts to limit itself to one revolution of the sun, which has been debated to refer either to a 12-hour period or a 24-hour period. Aristotle does not mention the unity of place at all in the Poetics, though some plays of the time did occur in a single place, so it might be understood as implicit in something that he said, though Aristotle was awfully explicit about a lot of things. So, anyone that's saying that Aristotle said the unity of place is probably on very, very shaky footing. Now, if Aristotle did not prescribe these minor unities, where did they come from? And why are they associated with Aristotle? The fault lies with the neoclassicists of France, starting in the mid-1600s. They advocated for rigorous adherence to the three unities, justified as, quote-unquote, classical by the claimed connection to Aristotle of theater, as well as the principles of bienséances and vraisemblance, basically following decorum and believable portrayals of events. Those could at least conceivably be pulled from some of Aristotle's principles about characters being virtuous, kind of having decorum, and being realistic or believable. So those principles you could at least pull out as Aristotelian. The unity of time, the unity of place, however, there's a lot more that is shaky in terms of whether Aristotle was proscriptive about those things, particularly place. These views on what theater should be held sway and were even enforced by strict censorship laws in France for over 100 years, influencing the works of greats such as Racine and Corneille, and were defended by Voltaire and Diderot against the English theater, which defied these rules, as evidenced by the popularity of Shakespeare, who very clearly had multiple plot lines, multiple actions, and stories that lasted sometimes long periods of time, and surely took place in many different places. Now, the rule of the neoclassicist was arguably brought to an end in the 1830s with the rise of Romanticism. In the theater, this is sometimes even traced down to a single event, the opening of Victor Hugo's play Hernani in 1830. The play outwardly flaunted the classicist rules of theater, and it even led to an open brawl between the Romanticists and the classicists in the audience during the performance, known as the Battle of Hernani. Think about that for a second, that a play could be so offensive to you not because of its content, but because of the way that the theater was done, that it didn't take place in 24 hours, and that it didn't have unity of action, and it didn't have some of these other things of the realistic portrayal and the virtue of the characters, that you would start fighting people in the audience over it. That is wild to me, and shows in some ways the power of rising up against kind of that censorship that existed in France at the time. Now, though censorship in France writ large would not be abolished for another 120 years, this event and the subsequent ousting of Charles X later that year led to the relaxing of France's strict adherence to the unities of drama. However, due to this long period of association of the unities with the Aristotelian conception of theater, these concepts were inextricably linked to Aristotle, despite
You see, this is something that you already know and something that we revisited multiple times. That, of course, there are minor unities which were there, but of course, there are many people who have been talking about it and much of it has been associated with Oedipus Rex as well. Once we study the next drama, you'll see that you will be able to make connections in that as well, because that's also a tragedy. Now, going back to the reading that I shared with you in the Google Classroom and otherwise, which is important, please do read it. And if you find anything difficult, do ask me in the next class. This is what I was referring to, where Oedipus Rex has been analyzed with respect to these three unities, which we have just discussed once more. Now, it's a good example. This drama is a good example because its story is definitely linear. It is sequential. It follows the first unity, which is the unity of action. And like in the video, and like we have already discussed, um, unity of action was the most important one. However, along with it, unity of time and unity of location came along. Time and location is usually part of the setting, be it a setting of a poem, novel, short story, or drama. So, setting is equally important because without the setting, the action will not be clarified. We won't know when and where the character is behaving or saying something. So, Oedipus Rex is a good example to talk about these three unities. The first unity, as the here, it seems paradoxical that a linear play ends in a cyclic way, getting back to where it started. The prophecy of the Delphic oracle. Do you remember the story in which story of Oedipus Rex? What happens is that in the beginning, we hear about a prophecy that has been prophesied to King Laius that his son will be born by Jocasta, and this son will kill him and then marry his wife. So that was a prophecy. And in the end of the play, this prophecy is again repeated. So, although the entire drama is written in a linear fashion, but the subject matter comes back to the same prophecy which started in the beginning. So it is the Greek genius that conceives of a linear structure and mashes it with a cyclic return, that it goes back to the point of their origin. The efforts of a human being, here it is Oedipus, his father, King Laius, and King of Thebes, and his mother, Queen Jocasta, to outwit the Delphic oracle ends in a colossal tragedy. अब क्या होता है कि King Laius and Jocasta also tried to defy their fate, which is not agreeing with what this oracle had to say, and they tried to kill King Oedipus. And similarly, King Oedipus is also informed by a drunken man at a party in his vicinity where he used to live, but he doesn't take it seriously. Both these characters, King Oedipus and the King of Thebes and Queen Jocasta, they try to defy their fate, but they are not able to do so, and they eventually go back to the pavilion, which means the point of origin. जहां से उन्होंने start किया था, वहीं पे they go back. Now let's talk about first unity, that is unity of time in Oedipus Rex. Okay, anybody who would like to share कि उन्हें कैसे लगता है कि unity of time has been followed in this drama? क्योंकि हमने पढ़ तो लिया है ना, थोड़ा बहुत आपको समझ भी आ गया होगा. So tell me if you have understood and if you would like to add something. Hmm? Nobody? No understanding at all? All right. In the first paragraph, Unity of Time in Oedipus Rex, it simply says that non-linear or non-sequential storytelling is only desirable in modern drama, but it was not there in Oedipus Rex. Now, if we go back to Aristotle's days, Unity of Time, it served more than one purpose because stages were set in the large theaters, amphitheaters, with actors often playing multiple roles, communicating the passage of time could be tricky and confusing. And because there were masks and body languages were used in order to communicate communicate with large spaces and across the characters. So trying to capture various periods of time would have made it very complicated and confusing for the audiences to understand. So, for the clarity purposes, for logistic purposes, unity of time, a concept given by Aristotle in Poetics, was used, right? Apart from the logistical difficulty in presenting different time periods, unity of time served purpose, especially for the audience. It gave the audience the tool of urgency, something which can play a pivotal role in any story. Now, this does not mean that non-linear stories are uninteresting, but when one watches a play on an open stage, then the best way to capture the attention of the audience is to hold it in a नाउ पोजीशन, यानी जिस वक्त प्रेजेंट टाइम में उसको प्रेजेंट करना chronological order में present karna is the most important, and that is unity of time. Now, how it has been showcased in the drama, this paragraph definitely talks about that, and I'm going to read it for you because you're failing to read it at your own, and I suspect and I'm afraid that you won't. So I'm going to read it, and I'm going to read it a little faster. Please bear it with me. The main event on the stage presents an infirm state of Thebes in the grip of deadly plague. Like in the beginning scene, we have talked about how there was a plague and people were in a procession and they are very much worried. So the first opening scene is about the plague, right? Oedipus is the new king of Thebes who has married Queen Jocasta without knowing she was his mother. But the events that preceded his ascent to the throne of Thebes could not be enacted except by narration either by the chorus or the other characters. अब जो कुछ हुआ बैकग्राउंड में कि वो किस तरह से किंग बना, उसने कौन सी रिडल क्लियर की, किस 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 स्टेज से गुजरा, उस सबको इनेक्ट करना वाज ऑलमोस्ट इम्पॉसिबल. देयरफॉर chorus came in. Chorus क्या है? Those 15 to 20 men who would come and explain anything that is left out in terms of action or in terms of matter. वो audiences के को clarify करने के लिए, messages पहुंचाने के लिए chorus को रखा जाता है. So even as King Oedipus is seething with anger after the blind Theseus has leveled the charge of murder on him, he learns about the dire prediction of the oracle for him. So this is the second episode where he, starts investigation and he calls for this blind prophet called Tiresias. But Tiresias, being very truthful, he tells him that you're the culprit, you're the man you are looking for. And in return, the reaction King Oedipus gives is a harsh one, an arrogant one, because he thinks that King has been targeted by his brother-in-law Creon and this blind prophet Theseus, and he accuses them or puts allegations on them of treason. Treason is when you scheme or plot against the state. तो जब आप किंग के खिलाफ या किसी पॉलिटिकल लीडर या अपने प्राइम मिनिस्टर के खिलाफ कोई स्कीम बनाते हैं तो दैट इट इज पनिशेबल बाय लॉ, एंड दैट लॉ इज कॉल्ड ट्रीजन, दैट एक्शन इज कॉल्ड ट्रीजन. और इसकी बहुत सख्त सजा होती है. यूजुअली इट्स कैपिटल पनिशमेंट विच इज हैंग टिल डेथ और मे बी हेड कर दिया जाता है. सो बोथ कुड बी देयर. एनीवे, so now he learns about the prediction of the oracle that has told him that he would be getting married to his mother and killing his father. Now the former king of Thebes, who's King Laius, and his queen Jocasta, to prevent the prophecy of the oracle coming true, they actually take these dire steps, these very disastrous steps of trying to kill their own son. He also learns a little later from a messenger from the Corinth about the events at Corinth, where again Oracle has chased Oedipus and made him depart from Corinth to nullify its prophecy. So again, a messenger क्या होता है? Stage conventions पे अगर आप दोबारा जाएं तो it was very important for the audiences to understand that how this message is. Of course, अब उस सेटिंग में जाना वॉज नॉट अ पॉसिबिलिटी कि कॉरिंथ का वो पूरा सेटअप लगाएं और करेक्टर्स जो हैं वो फिर कॉरिंथ के कपड़े पहने और पूरा एक सभा बिठाई जाए. दैट वाज नॉट अ पॉसिबिलिटी. सो to soothe this out, एक मैसेंजर आता है और मैसेंजर नाउ ऑडियंस को भी इंफॉर्मेशन देता है और करेक्टर्स को भी. Although the stage shows time present and reveals the past events in flashback through the voices of the chorus and other characters, what happens on stage exemplifies the unity of time as it deals with Oedipus at a particular time. ठीक है, जो इवेंट्स ये मैसेंजर आके बताता है वो पास्ट से ही है, वो हो चुके हैं, लेकिन ऐसे मैनर में टाइमली बताया जाता है कि इट adheres to the unity of time itself. Then there is an activity that you can do at your own. Read the full play and then note the movement of time throughout the play. आप ये खुद भी कर सकते हैं, नहीं तो इससे रिलेटेड रिसर्च आर्टिकल्स भी अवेलेबल हैं, आप वो भी पढ़ सकते हैं. अदरवाइज हमने यहाँ डिस्कशन थोड़ी बहुत कर ही ली है. Then we have unity of action. Now, despite the thousands of years between us and Aristotle, this is one step that all writer feels as essential to any story. That action is very important. Now, a stage play is not a Bollywood film where there is an emphasis on full action, gunfights, sword fights, and explosions. The art of good play writing, both in story and language, lies in being concise in content and precise in expression. ठीक है, जो कंसाइजमेंट है वो कंटेंट में होगा और प्रिसिजन हम एक्सप्रेशंस में लाएंगे. Now, the better those words, the more elegant the play is. And definitely, when we watch any movie these days, the more conviction we see in the dialogues, the more we are attracted towards it. One-liners का बड़ा आजकल एक दौर है. We love it if the one-liners or the two-liners are very good. Opening statements are very important for us. So इस तरह से unity of action की बात हो रही है. Now, the plot of Oedipus moves through the life of Oedipus as king to Thebes with flashbacks to his childhood when he was abandoned, and then he went to Corinth, and as a flash forward to his tragic exile from the Thebes. Do you remember that the tragedy of he being exiled from Thebes was actually stated by the blind prophet earlier, before it actually happened, where he leaves with Antigone, one of his children. अपनी बेटी के साथ वो जब छोड़कर जाना होता है, उसने एंड सीन वो ऑलरेडी prophesize कर देता है ये blind prophet. So flash forwards and flashbacks are there, but unity of time is there. The time only takes place within the 12 and 24 hours on the stage. It's not about the real time, it's about the time on the stage. The Delphic Oracle is at the center, directing his identity. He's destined to be a tragic figure, and that is how the gods will it. That is the will of a god. The action of the play centers on Oedipus's life from beginning to end. There are no subplots, and the narration of the past is woven into present as action in continuity. Aristotle talks about unity of action that is complemented by unity of time and place. Remember, unity of time and place are the minor unities. He actually talked about unity of action at length in his Poetics, which is the book that he has written. But unity of place and time cannot be taken away from the action, because in order for action to take place, it needs time and location at the same time. Right? In his reckoning, the Greek concept of tragedy is a theatrical capsule of a colossal waste of human potential. Colossal matlab vast, very big, on a large scale. But the efforts of a man to confront his destiny, now these efforts have been taken by King Laius and King Oedipus both. दोनों ने कोशिश की कि वो अपनी destiny को defy करें, किसी तरह से escape करें, but they were not able to do so. And eventually, their courage and the spirit is beaten down by this tragedy. That is the Greek tragedy. Now, in order to make the audiences feel the impact of Oedipus's tragedy, the playwright uses the three unities that leaves no scope for any diversion from the central narrative. Now, this word playwright means the writer, the dramatist. The story begins with Oedipus, his regal action to respond to the visitations of the plague. ओपनिंग में आपको अगेन दे आर गोइंग बैक टू द ओपनिंग जहाँ पर एक प्लेग है एंड देन द पीपल आर वेरी मच worried about it. Now this is a tragic calamity. Now it is a divine punishment. Of course it's from the gods. It's an effort, it's a punishment for the sinners who had caused the god to get angry, and this wrath of god is being depicted in a form of the plague itself. Now his shock on learning about the cause of the plague as a consequence of his heinous murder of King Lais and his shameful and despicable marriage to his own mother ends with the pronouncement of self-punishment. In the beginning, there was one text in which he says that, "Come forward, whoever knows the culprit, he will be recompensated for the piece of information. And if you are the culprit, then come forward. I will not give you capital punishment. I will only banish you." तो ये एक sense of arrogance and self-righteousness is led towards this heinous, disastrous consequence. Of course, incest means to get into a sexual relationship with your blood relatives is something that is absolutely not acceptable for Greek theater or such tragedies and religion. So is the case in our religion as well, but we are talking about the Greek tragedy and that time where this took place. Now, the entire play is thus knit by a single action vested on Oedipus. एक action की वजह से जहाँ पर King Laius and Oedipus they try to defy their fate, it leads them to this particular end, which is disastrous, heinous, and tragic in nature. Now, the third unity, that is the unity of place, this is a minor unity. Again, this was more useful in Aristotle days. It's not very much useful in the technological world of 21st century or modern drama. So it is important to understand that many writers show a lack of appreciation for the unity of place, and their work often suffers as a result. Now, characters, they need goals. They need to have some kind of direction and a balance to progress and go through any obstacles, such as even fate that comes their way. If the unity of place is not intacted or it's not firm and written in not in such a manner which is strong, then the result of a drama can suffer or drama can be ineffective. Now, what we see on the stage is continuation of the story, and it is not possible for the theater audience to revert to a previous scene. आज के ज़माने में आपके पास बहुत सारी टेक्नोलॉजी, आप पिछले सीन पे जा सकते हैं और अगर कुछ आपसे मिस भी हो जाए, कुछ कॉम्प्लिकेटेड भी शोकेस किया जाए, you can always revisit. But in Aristotle's time, it was not a possibility to go back and actually revisit the scene. So it had to be enacted or performed in such a manner that it made complete sense for the audiences. Now, in Oedipus Rex, all actions happen in Thebes as the crowd of people are there, right? They're talking about the ravaging plague, the rigid plague, the rapid plague that they are faced with. Now, Oedipus assures the audiences or his subjects that he will do something about it. He says that he has already sent Creon, his brother-in-law, to the oracle to learn about what is the cause of the plague. At that moment, Creon returns to tell about his visit, that he had visited Delphic oracle and he has found something. Now, that is followed by visit by this blind prophet called Theseus, who, with his doomed prophecy, talks about the murderer is not anybody else but Oedipus himself, because Oracle tells Creon that the plague that you're facing is a divine punishment from the god, because King Lais has been murdered and he has not been avenged, and that avenge has to be taken place, which means कि उसके murder का बदला लेना है, but that has not been taken place. And it also tells then this blind prophet tells them that it is King Oedipus himself who's the murderer. Now, the messenger from Corinth little later comes and speaks about the death of King of Corinth. He also says that long time ago he took this child from the same place, that is the Thebes, to this queen of Corinth who was childless. Now the chorus enters and predicts the fall of Oedipus. Now chorus का again एक function है यहाँ पे कि वो पहले ही बता देता है कि Oedipus will see a very tragic fall because of one action that he has taken. Now unity of place thus does not allow the main story to move to the action out of Thebes. कि Corinth से जो information आई, हम Corinth में नहीं जाते, we stay on the stage on the same place and time, that is in Thebes, but a messenger comes and tells us the further जिसे हम flashback कहते हैं modern drama में. Now, these frequent scenic changes are avoided so as not to divert the audience's attention from the story, but to locate them in different places to make the understanding for the audiences, to clarify that the Corinth is not there. We have not moved to the Corinth, but whatever is happening in Corinth has an effect on everything that is taking place in Thebes. A single location where the protagonist is present all the time helps in giving the story the needed understanding. So in order, that is the three, these were the three unities that I wanted to discuss with you. Now let's sum up. Now this particular unit told you about the dramatic unities which are there in classical Greek tragedy King Oedipus. Now it's not a necessity for every play to have or follow these dramatic unities given by Aristotle in his book called Poetics. Now they had a significant role that we have discussed, and definitely in ancient times when plays were staged in the open and there was no employment of technology to bring the change in location and time, these unities were very helpful in order for the plot to unfold itself in an effective manner. So this is an attribute. These three unities could be one of those attributes which are very much, we can say, important for the Greek tragedies and the tragedies written in the classical time. So remember, these three unities are important in terms of Oedipus Rex and Greek tragedies that we are going to read further. Now, go ahead, take a look at this handout. I've posted it in your Google Classroom as well. If you have any questions, I'm giving you 5 minutes to go through it. You can ask or post your questions, and once we are done with those questions, we move forward next, right? 5 मिनट में बेटे आप देख लें, आपको कोई क्वेश्चन आता है माइंड में तो पूछ लें प्लीज.
That
ये बेटा any questions? कोई सवाल है तो प्लीज पूछे. If there is no question and everything is clear, please write in the chat box that there's no question or everything is clear, something like that, so that I know that you're listening and, of course, you're understanding. Okay, Tawheed has written that he has understood and there's no question. What about the rest of you? Please confirm in the chat box. Okay, yes, please go ahead. सिर्फ clear ही लिख दें. Clear, clear, so that I understand, please. All right. So that is all I wanted to share with you about the drama called Oedipus Rex. I'll just give you a little recap of what we have discussed so far so that you know. So far, so forth, we have talked about the Greek theater and how it evolved. We also talked about drama and its types and why it is important to understand. We spent a good amount of classes on it. Do read it. Background knowledge is always important because you will always be asked or you will always be expected to compare and contrast the modern take with the Greek one, with the Renaissance or Elizabethan. जितना self study करेंगे उतना अच्छा है. सारा कुछ यहाँ बताना is not a possibility. Anyway, so we talked about the definition of a tragedy, what is a tragic hero, what are the conventions of the Greek theater, how a Greek tragedy is completed. We have prologue, paradox, exodus, we have episodes, we have scenes, we have chorus, messenger is there, these three unities are there. And then, other than this, we also talked about hamartia, hubris, and anagrosis, peripeteia. All these things are important for the archetypal tragic hero theory that we discussed in the Poetics from Aristotle. Just remember that we tried to actually address this drama. Story तो हमें पता ही है. Summary writing is never expected. आपके एग्जाम में, क्विज में, असाइनमेंट में कभी भी आपसे ये नहीं कहा जाएगा कि आप स्टोरी लिख दें कि स्टोरी में क्या हो रहा है. ठीक है, दैट इज सेकेंडरी. स्टोरी समझ आ जाना, that is written in a chronological and linear manner, that's great, but that is not it. You will be asked to write that this is a tragic or Greek tragedy, discuss and justify it, in which you will be writing all these points that we have been discussing for almost 5 classes, in which we talked about that how these three unities, the background, the political, social, and religious backgrounds of Athens can contribute, because Sophocles, who's the writer of this drama, was from the ruling party and he saw what was happening. So he wrote a tragic ending. So tragedy is important, and these three unities are important. Everything related to the discussions we have had in the classes I've posted in the Google Classroom and otherwise, please follow those and you should be able to, you're good to go. Other than that, there was one document in which there were 5 sections. Analysis was given for each section where there were certain lines. So वो lines reference to the context के लिए बहुत important है, which I told you is done in a certain way only. तो वहाँ जो lines होंगी वो reference to the context में से मतलब उसमें से आ सकता है. Another important announcement that I would like to make is that you're going to have your first assignment due by next Friday. Assignment क्या है, क्या नहीं करनी, वो बेटे अभी क्लास के बाद में पोस्ट कर दूंगी. और कल कल तो नहीं, मतलब कि मंडे या ट्यूसडे को जब भी हमारी क्लास है उसमें आपको और भी क्लैरिफाई कर दिया जाएगा कि कैसे होनी है और कैसे नहीं. सबमिशन कहाँ होगी, कैसे होगी, एवरीथिंग विल बी टोल्ड टू यू. Right? So assignment 1 के लिए mentally prepared रहें, which will be based on everything that we have discussed so far. So this was a quick recap of what we have discussed so far. I hope you're clear कि आपको लग रहा होगा कि हमने बहुत कुछ पढ़ लिया. No. All these things, they correspond to one and only one question, that Oedipus Rex is a Greek tragedy which has the role of fate, will, oracle, dreams, chanting. ये सब कुछ उसमें आता है. 3 unities भी से ग्रीक ट्रेजेडी बनाती हैं. ट्रैजिक हीरो की जो थेरी, आर्कीटाइपल थेरी हमने डिस्कस की है, वो भी इसे ग्रीक ट्रेजेडी बनाती है. तो ये जो 3-4 पर्सपेक्टिव्स हमने डिस्कस किए हैं, all of them are included in the same discussion, which is making this particular drama a Greek tragic drama. ठीक है बेटे, I hope that's clear. Okay, now we move forward to the next dramatist, which is Christopher Marlowe. We do have a lot of time at our hands, and since this is an online class, instead of giving you a reading and expecting you to read, let's watch a quick biography of Christopher Marlowe. Now remember, now we are moving towards Elizabethan drama. याद है शुरू में हमने बात किया था कि बात की थी कि ड्रामा इवॉल्व होता है फ्रॉम क्लासिकल ड्रामा टू ग्रीक ड्रामा to Anglo-Saxon drama, and then we have Renaissance drama that is again around the same period, which is Elizabethan drama. So Christopher Marlowe is from another century, and he would be writing in a different manner because world has evolved, things have evolved, but there would be some similarities to the drama that we have discussed so far, which is the King Oedipus. Now let's look at the biography of Christopher Marlowe.
Christopher Marlowe was the bad boy of Elizabethan literature. He pushed the limits of literary form.
I hope it's audible to you. Sabko
Yes,
sunai?
ma'am.
Okay. Now, this is a professor who's explaining. It's very well, spoken by her. थोड़ा सा आपको आइडिया हो जाएगा क्रिस्टोफर मार्लोव किस किस्म का राइटर था और किस किस्म का इंसान था. And these pictures, look at these pictures, with intention. It talks about the era in which it was written.
Challenged the religious Christopher Marlowe was the bad boy of Elizabethan literature. He pushed the limits of literary form. He challenged the religious status quo. He challenged social norms, legal norms of behavior. In a word, Marlowe pushed limits.
There is no record of Christopher Marlowe's birth date, but there are records of his baptism on February 26, 1564, in Canterbury, England. Marlowe was the son of a shoemaker. He attended the King's School and then won a scholarship to Cambridge University.
Cambridge University hesitated to grant Christopher Marlowe his master's degree in 1587 because they suspected that he may have converted to Catholicism. But the Crown, or namely the Privy Council, intervened on Marlowe's behalf to give him the degree. So this has led scholars to speculate that Marlowe must have been an agent for the Crown.
After his education at Cambridge, Marlowe went to London to produce literature for the public stage. This is the beginning of the professionalization of writing and the concept of a person living as a writer. Marlowe managed to figure out what his audiences wanted: violent, sensationalistic fiction, and he provided that.
Marlowe's first play, Dido, Queen of Carthage, was performed in London in the late 1580s.
Marlowe was just before Shakespeare in terms of achieving popularity and fame in the Elizabethan theater.
Marlowe's second play, Tamburlaine, was performed in the London stage around 1587, and it's one of the first plays to use blank verse in an effective theatrical way. Blank verse is unrhymed iambic pentameter, and so it's a big deal to try to develop that.
After Tamburlaine, Marlowe wrote only 4 additional plays: Dr. Faustus, Jew of Malta, Edward II, and Massacre at Paris.
Christopher Marlowe had a wonderful influence on Shakespeare. Marlowe's plays often resulted in a similar play by Shakespeare, which dealt with very similar themes, as if Shakespeare were one-upping Marlowe, which is the way Elizabethan theater often worked.
Marlowe wrote 4 plays that are famous today. Shakespeare wrote 38. But those 4 plays that Marlowe wrote provided Shakespeare with the plot material for 4 of his most popular plays, so that Jew of Malta becomes Merchant of Venice, Dr. Faustus becomes Macbeth, Edward II becomes Richard II, and Tamburlaine becomes the Henriette.
Marlowe's most famous play was the tragical history of Dr. Faustus.
Dr. Faustus was incendiary. During a period of time when you had Puritans outside of the theater rallying against it as the Devil's Cauldron, Marlowe puts on a play where the title character summons the devil on stage. This is a period of time when people are new to the theater, and if you can imagine having a title character draw a whole bunch of circles and pentagrams on stage and mumble in Latin, and poof, a devil appears, you have a sense of just how frightening that play might have been.
Christopher Marlowe never married and died when he was only 29 years old on May 30th, 1593.
Marlowe died in typically sensationalistic circumstances. He was stabbed in the eye, he was at a boarding house, and presumably there was a dispute over the bill or the reckoning. This is thought by many people to be simply a cover. A few days prior, he had been accused of treason and of heresy. The timing of this death is extremely suspect. Despite the fact that Marlowe was only writing plays in London for 6 years, he is one of the top 10 English playwrights of all.
जी बेटा कायनात क्या कह रही हैं आप? Kainat, you want to say something? Oh. बेटे इस क्लास को भी ना आप ऑफिशियली समझा करें. It's not a joke. Anyway, that was the entire discussion about Christopher Marlowe that I wanted to share you. It's not enough, of course. Our reading will be posted. जहाँ आप पढ़ सकते हैं कौन से स्कूल कॉलेज इसमें उन्होंने बता तो दिया है. So can anybody sum it up for the entire class that what did we get to know about Christopher Marlowe? क्या पता चला हमें क्रिस्टोफर मार्लोव के बारे में? कौन बताना चाहेगा? जी तौहीद, go ahead बेटे.
So about the video,
Hmm.
so हमें ये पता चला कि Christopher Marlowe was basically a leftist.
Hmm.
So he was against the cultural or the religious norms of the society, and he was against those things, and he tried to make literature out of those things. And due to some certain favors that he got from the crown, some people also thought that he was an agent for the crown, and he used to write, for the crown and for the queen or the king at that time.
Hmm.
Similarly, we also noticed that he was a literate. He was a literate genius just before the Shakespeare, and even Shakespeare was influenced by him by a great deed. For example, uh, the four plays of Shakespeare himself were influenced by Christopher Marlowe.
Hmm.
And about his death, that is a controversy because um, as in the video, it is suggested that he was committed of a treason.
Hmm.
So that suggests that he was with the crown from the beginning, but in the end, he might have, started to write against the crown, or he was against what the crown intended or what the queen or king wanted at that time. So that was my take on this, and
Very
yes.
good. Very precise, very on point. You actually mentioned all the points which were important, and the fact that you highlighted that it could be treason, and there are controversies which say that the dramas written by Shakespeare were actually stolen from Christopher Marlowe. People believe now there are a group of peoples, of course, one of them they believe that Shakespeare actually stole the material. यहाँ वीडियो में तो we are told that he actually was influenced by the plots, hence four dramas converted into another four flavors of drama. But then there are controversies in which they say that Shakespeare was so highly influenced, or sometimes there are people they even say that Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe are the same people, and the fact that Marlowe only wrote four plays and Shakespeare wrote 38. There is a huge difference, but Marlowe was able to leave an impact, and that is the reason we are reading him right now. This is 2025, and we're still reading him in British English literature because he's important, because he was impactful. And the fact that in the beginning the professor says that he was a bad boy. Bad boy means he was not following the followed. He had his own opinions and he wanted to experiment, and he was okay to show the violence on the stage. Previously, in the previous drama, we did come across where we were told that the violent or murder scenes were not performed on the stages, but this time, because people were evolving, they wanted to see something new, so these supernatural figures would actually appear on the stages, and people would be in the sense of wonder, of amazement, and they could get scared at the same time. ग्रीक ड्रामा का भी मकसद यही था to evoke emotions of pity and fear, but in a certain manner, in a sophisticated or a controlled or pre-rehearsed manner. But this had impact on masses of all sorts. Every level of the society was impacted by it, because it included something that was relatable for all kinds of audience. वेरी गुड तौहीद. तौहीद ने बहुत अच्छे से आपके लिए इसको दोबारा sum up कर दिया. So
Thank you.
you're welcome, Bitte. And thank you that you're listening and you're participating. You're the fresh, वो क्या कहते हैं, चौसर कहता था ना, you're as fresh as the month of May. So you're that breeze that is very refreshing in the class that you're participating. So this was a little introduction of Christopher Marlowe. Now, in order to understand Christopher Marlowe, you need to understand the Elizabethan age as well. That what was happening in Elizabethan age, right? So let's take a look if I can find a 2-minute video to give you a quick review of that, and then we can go to, move forward to your favorite part, that is attendance, right? So Elizabethan theater, let me see if I can find some videos.
I knew the main features of
Okay, I found one. Let's watch it. These videos are very helpful. I can tell you the same information, but I have found this to be more effective in case of students वो ज़्यादा अच्छे से इसको समझ पाते हैं. These are 13 minutes, but I'll be skipping some parts in order to complete it within the time.
the Elizabethan era, 1558 to 1603, is the period when Elizabeth I sat on the throne of England. The age saw a boom in the arts in general, but it was the performance arts that perhaps made the most lasting contribution to English and even world culture. The Queen was herself an admirer of plays, performances and spectacles, which were frequently held at her royal residences. Elizabeth carefully managed her image as the Virgin Queen, who had sacrificed her personal life to better concentrate on the good of her people. Theatre was, therefore, just one of the media she used to project her own glory and that of her family, the Tudors. The Queen actively sponsored artists and playwrights. The origins. At the beginning of the 16th century, many plays were based upon religious themes. These were called morality plays and showed good and bad conduct. Others, called miracle plays, showed scenes from the Bible. Plays date back to the ancient Greeks of the 6th century BC. There were also masques, a type of mime where masked performers sang, danced, and recited poetry wearing extravagant costumes and stood before painted scenery. Finally, towns across England had long-funded public shows which involved musicians, acrobats and jesters, and these continued even as theatre became popular. The main exception to these were the plays put on by wandering groups of actors known as strolling players. The plays put on by
Till this point, they've told you about miracle and morality plays. And look at the pictures. They're depicting the kind of life they were living, the merrymaking that they were doing, and how they were enjoying. And then there is a Globe Theatre, which actually incorporated history, comedy, and tragedy. Different colors of flags were used to represent what type of play was being actually performed that day. And definitely, if you talk about the actors were very versatile now. They could actually change into different costumes now, and they were very much eloquent in their, dialogues as well. This is a video that you should watch. Of course, I'll show you in the classroom even if in the next class if we meet, of course. अब क्योंकि time खत्म हो रहा है, I need to take your attendance. So I'm going to paste the link of this video in your group. जब आपके पास बेटे टाइम हो, do watch it. Otherwise, you will be missing out at a lot of information that you require in order to understand Christopher Marlowe and Elizabethan drama. Okay, now I'll be taking your attendance. Let me open the sheet. I've taken your attendance twice through the video already. If you were able to join in the beginning or you left at the middle or something, मैंने कोशिश की है. अभी भी मैं आपकी attendance ले लेती हूँ. Your section C, your section C. Okay, today is 21st. Okay, this is section A हो गया. एक second. When I take your name, please unmute yourself and say present. Mazhar Ali, Zuhaib Khan, Suhail Khan,
Present, ma'am. Present, ma'am.
Zuhaib के सुहेल. Zuhaib,
हेलो मैम.
Zuhaib बेटा आप प्रेजेंट हो?
जी जी प्रेजेंट हूँ मैम. मेरा कल का भी लगा दे, कल का भी था मैं.
अल्ताफ,
मैम मजहर. यस मैम.
मजहर भी हैं. ठीक है बेटे, मैं लगाती हूँ. आतिफ रहमान,
प्रेजेंट मैम.
मोहम्मद उस्मान,
प्रेजेंट मैम.
मोहम्मद उस्मान,
यस मैम.
मोहम्मद नदीम, ईशा ईमान.
Present. Present.
ओके बेटे, ओके.
Present. Present.
ओके, किसने अपने आप को अनम्यूट कर लिया? प्लीज म्यूट कर लीजिए। यस, देखिए अगर आप ओपन में सुनेंगे तो वो फिर एको होकर हमें बार बार सुनाई देगा। सिबातुल हसन,
Yes, ma'am.
नजफ, शाहनूर, अरीशा, हफ्सा,
Present, ma'am.
तमसील,
Yes, ma'am.
मिदरार, मोहम्मद खुशनूद,
Present, ma'am.
मोहम्मद अब्बास,
Yes, ma'am.
कायनात अब्बासी, ये तो थी ही बिकॉज इनके घर की आवाजें हमें आ रही थी। मोहम्मद जीशान, मोहम्मद उमर,
Present.
एजाजुर रहमान, रीम अजहर,
Present, ma'am.
अहमद अफाफ,
Present.
नुकैस रसल,
Present, ma'am.
खतीजा खान, हूर कामरान,
Yes, ma'am.
सहर हनीफ, तौहीद अहमद,
Yes, ma'am.
मारिया बीबी,
Present.
शहाबुद्दीन। ओके, एनीबडी लेफ्ट जिन्होंने
Present, ma'am.
चलिए शहाब हैं।
Yes, ma'am. अरीशा जलील मैम आपने मेरी मार्क नहीं किया अटेंडेंस।
तो बोलोगे तो करोगी ना मुझे। चल हो गया, अरीशा जलील हो गया। एनीबडी एल्स जो पहला दिन हो जिसका? ओके, that will be all. Please do look at that video that I shared with you. The material is already posted in your Google Classroom. Go through it. It's important for you to stay on track in order to understand the next classes. अगर आप बिल्कुल आउट ऑफ टच हैं और सिर्फ क्लास में सो रहे हैं तो फिर मुश्किल हो जाएगा, आपको समझ नहीं आएगी। जो भी मैं कहूँगी, मैं जो मर्जी कर लूँ, समझ आना मुश्किल हो जाएगी। You need these foundation or this foundational information for you to move further. Anyway, thank you so much. See you in next class. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz, ma'am.
Allah Hafiz, ma'am.